Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Brooklyn Park, Osseo, and Maple Grove, I would like to welcome you to the Candidates Forum this evening. Tonight's forum is solely sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Brooklyn Park, Osseo, and Maple Grove. Due to the announcement of Twin West Political Action Committee's intent to endorse a candidate or candidates in this race, Twin West Chamber of Commerce has rescinded its sponsorship to remove any conflict of interest and keep this a nonpartisan candidate forum. The League of Women Voters is an organization that is nonpartisan and volunteer-based. It is organized at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While LWV members do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse nor support political parties or candidates. The LWV does encourage its members as individuals, as we encourage each of you, to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. However, the views expressed in this forum are those of the individual candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. By sponsoring tonight's forum, the League provides an opportunity for citizen participation and exposure to all candidates, but does not provide an endorsement of any candidate or candidates. All viable candidates have been invited to participate this evening, and I'm so happy all four of you are here. Tonight, our forum is for Senate District 34 and Representative District 34B. In tonight's forum, the candidates will start with 6 of the 7 questions they received in advance, in which they have 1 minute to respond. Then our candidates will have up to 30 seconds to respond to each of the questions that were coming in via email. Finally, they will be given 1 minute for their final question, which is their final statements. Candidates, the League would like to request you refrain from making any personal attacks on your fellow candidates. I will gavel you if I have to. There we go. Now they're giggling. Okay. Due to the pandemic, we have no in-person audience this forum or any others that we are holding to keep everyone safe. We have been posting email addresses to which questions may be sent. During this live broadcast, your questions may be sent to candidateforums@twinwest.com. Our screeners are here making sure the questions are viable for all candidates in this forum and again are not in any way a personal attack towards any candidate. I'd like to take this moment to point out our timekeepers for this evening. They will show you when you have 15 seconds to finish your statements and then show you that your time has expired. Please finish your sentence at that time, as I will be directing the next speaker's turn. The order has been, well, we started one way, and after that you're up to the whim of my own little gavel and chart, so you'll enjoy yourself. Stay on your toes. All right, so for 34 Senate, we have Warren Limmer and Bonnie Westland. And for Representative 34B, we have Kristen Bonner and Dory Trosson. All right, we're going to start with your 1 minute questions. Mr. Limmer, we'll start with you. Please tell us about your background and previous civic involvement that support your candidacy for this position.
Well, thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. One thing I would want to say is, before any background that I have to say I'm a father. I'm a dad of 3 kids. They were schooled in the Osseo Public Schools and got a very good first step on education, and then moved on to college, where 2 of them have graduated and 1 is still working at it. 2 are married and 1 is not, but nevertheless, you not only become a father, but you become a husband. And my wife Lori and I live in Maple Grove for the last 25 years. I'm a former business owner. I am still involved in real estate sales and investment, a former correction officer, and I worked as a young man in the City of Crystal Human Rights Commission, the Hennepin County Corrections Advisory Board, and I am now the current state senator.
Thank you. Ms. Westland?
Thank you. Thank you for hosting us this evening. I'm Bonnie Westland, and I'm running for state senate, and I'm asking for your vote. I have worked hard all of my life, overcoming a number of obstacles along the way, to create a successful small business practice, solo practice for family law. And I worked hard to put myself through college and through law school so that I could create a better life for my son and for myself. As an attorney and a mediator, I spend most of my day trying to seek common ground and trying to help people find resolution to their disputes while maintaining their humanity, a skill that I think is desperately needed at our legislature. I've been a leader in my synagogue. I have worked as a community activist for over 40 years, and I believe that when good people come together to work on common problems, we can solve any challenge. I have worked very hard to create a better life for my family, and when elected, I'll work as hard for your family as I have my own.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner?
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to serve our community, and I feel so blessed to do this work. I'm a small business owner and IT professional for over 20 years. I've been appointed to the Governor's Blue Ribbon Commission on IT. In plain language, that means that I'm a team leader with experience to remove barriers, reach across the aisle, and get things done. I'm the daughter of a nurse and an engineer with a pharmacist next door. I've spent my entire life in healthcare, and particularly in the areas of medical records, prior authorization, preventing hospital readmission, providing better patient care, which makes me uniquely qualified to understand healthcare from the inside out and to work to create systems that work for real families. In terms of civic engagement, I spent my childhood volunteering with my parents to build strong communities. As an activist, I worked with diverse organizations and communities on various issues. But the best part of my job as a legislator is interacting with the families out and about in my own community, meeting with city and government
Thank you.
police, and to best serve my community.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
Hi, I want to thank the forum for having this. It's a really awesome way to meet with some voters. My name is Dory Trosson. I'm running for state representative in our district, and I am a lifetime resident of our community. I'm a health and wellness coach. I'm a mom. I've been a licensed daycare provider, and I really live a life of service to our community. My goal in my run is to listen, support, and empower the people of our community to bring their voices up and be able to have them feel like their voices are being heard and they feel comfortable bringing their voices to the Capitol. So my goal is that. I was a Girl Scout for 13 years in our community. I volunteer at the local nursing home, and I volunteer at the local food shelf, and anything that I can do to support our community, I am there.
Thank you. Our next question, in which Ms. Trosson will be our first responder. What are your top 2 priorities for the legislator that you should you be elected?
I have my top 2 priorities are public safety and seniors and children. Public safety is something that I've heard about many, many times over the course of talking with people over my run for office. It's something people are very concerned about, and I want to make sure that people's voices are heard. There isn't really many people who haven't talked to me about it and their concerns of recent events within our community, our state, and across our country. It's essential that this goes with our kids and our seniors, and taking care of the people in our community is that people need to feel safe. If kids aren't feeling safe, if families aren't feeling safe, it's going to be very hard for them to get their education, to be able to focus on their education, because they will be focusing more on how to survive. And as a community, I think that's really important, and as a state, we really need to make sure that people are feeling safe and comfortable in our work, in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer, same question.
Yes, the top 2 priorities. The number 1 would be public safety. Quite honestly, with rising violent crime in Minneapolis that very well may threaten our suburbs, public safety is vitally important. The number 1 role of government, so says our state constitution, is the safety of our citizens. That's vitally important. I take that role very seriously. But it's also time to re-examine how law enforcement works, how they react to different communities. The other issue is the upcoming budget deficit, with a looming $4 to $5 billion budget deficit next year. That is going to affect every element of spending in the state of Minnesota. Think of nursing homes, law enforcement, corrections, highway construction. That is the most vital concern. And are we going to solve it by the old tax and spend method, where we just raise the money and spend it? Or will we take this opportunity to use it as a moment of change?
Ms. Westland?
Thank you so much. You know, we're facing a lot of challenges these days due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in fact, we are still deeply in the middle of this challenge. We need some serious leaders that are focused on the serious solutions to help our community. The number 1 issue I'm hearing from people as I'm talking to them continues to be healthcare. And having experienced the broken healthcare system myself, Firsthand, I will work toward affordable health care for all of our Minnesotans, including addressing the high cost of prescription drugs. And we need to be encouraging preventative care and a system that rewards good outcomes for patients as opposed to simply doing fee-for-service. We need to fully fund our education system, and we need to actually do something about the opportunity gap. And finally, I am committed to doing something about gun violence. My best friend died by suicide in 1991, and I am deeply and personally affected by the gun violence epidemic that we face, and I promise that I will seek to pass legislation addressing those issues.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner.
Thank you. My priorities are always about putting people first and creating government that works for real families and seniors. My first priority is around healthcare and prescription drugs, which is an essential part of the mix. That means accessible and affordable healthcare that provides protections for pre-existing conditions, prioritizes preventative care and better patient outcomes, eases the burden of unnecessary barriers to care, provides for transparency at the pharmacy while reducing the cost of prescription drugs. The goal is to put patients back in the driver's seat and put money back into your pockets where it belongs. My second priority is really around issues that have a direct impact on women and children, specifically access to early childhood education, the environment, which bears directly on health outcomes in our families, women's equality and pay equity, the goal being to care for our families and to provide for a brighter future for the next generation.
Thank you. Question number 3, in which Ms. Bonner will be the first responder. Do you feel that the state has managed the COVID-19 pandemic well? Why or why not? And what would you do differently? Or what more should the state do?
Thank you. We've seen this pandemic play out across the world and here at home. 76% of Minnesotans believe we've done a good job. Our state recovery rate is in the top tier. Unemployment rates are a full percentage point below the national average. We see more jobs opening up, helping families put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. We've avoided a second shutdown, which would be disastrous for small businesses. And we need those businesses to survive and to thrive for vibrant communities. Whether you agree or disagree with masks, it has leveled the playing field for businesses, allowing them to reopen and begin the challenging task of recovery. Our swift ramp up of testing with our local partners at the Mayo and U of M led the nation and allows us to slow the spread, and we're seeing the positive results play out. Minnesotans understand that working together and helping their neighbors is the swiftest way to beat this pandemic.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
Well, COVID-19 is a new thing for us. It's the first time that we've had a pandemic like this in our lifetime. So it's important that we understand that a lot of the statistics that we were working with in the beginning were models of things that we weren't sure were going to happen. I'm really grateful that the models have been adjusted to see that we aren't seeing as dire of an issue as we had originally, though we still have a lot to do. People's business, there is nobody that hasn't been affected by this. Business, schooling, our seniors, everybody is hurting. And it's important that we are looking at all the options and making sure that we are taking an individualized approach now to make sure that there aren't unintended consequences from the choices that we're making.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Limmer.
Well, have we managed COVID-19 well? Well, I guess it's easy to be a morning back quarterback and try to determine that, but we have learned much about COVID-19. We've learned about the vulnerabilities of some and not others. But should we have been led into a fearful environment, having estimates of 74,000 people were going to die, when that alone would have represented 25% of the world population that would have died because of COVID? That was quite a fearsome thing to hear from the governor. Should we trust every community to act in the same manner? Should we treat every community the same way? Some communities in the metro area have very many problems, and in other parts of the state, very isolated. I think they should be handled in a little bit more customized fashion. We know the characteristics of the COVID now, we know the vulnerabilities, and I think we should treat the vulnerabilities separately from the rest of the population.
Thank you. And Ms. Westland.
Thank you so much. At the current time, every single one of the 50 states has some form of a declared emergency at this time. Our federal government still recognizes that there is an emergency. There is still much that we don't know about COVID-19. And as has been noted earlier, we don't have a playbook for dealing with this type of a pandemic. Having said all of that, I do believe that Governor Walz, with the input from experts and epidemiologists, his Department of Health, the Department of Education, and other agencies have done their very, very best to provide information to inform our policies. And while some decisions that he's made may have been politically unpopular, they were nevertheless based on facts and based on science and based on evidence. So I think we need to focus on ensuring that we help small businesses and our business communities, and especially focus on helping our schools, and that we need to be sending out one single message, that we are all part of getting over this pandemic. Wear your mask.
All right, Ms. Wesson, you'll be the first responder to question number 4. What additional actions should the legislature take to address concerns about policing and racial justice?
Well, first of all, racial justice is actually about so much more than just policing. I'm committed to eliminating structural and systemic racism that continues to be a problem in our communities and our institutions. I have an incredible respect for the members of the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, the Posse Caucus, who worked tirelessly and provided great leadership on helping us develop transformative changes to public safety and to criminal justice and to policing. And of course, some things were passed, I believe, in the 3rd special session, but there is so much more work that really needs to be done. We need to create a system, a public safety system, and a criminal justice system that work for every Minnesotan, regardless of what they look like or where they live. We need to create a system that is just and fair for every Minnesotan. And we need to focus on how communities and their police departments can function and work better together in a more cooperative way.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner?
Thank you. The passage of the Police Reform and Accountability Act was a good first step. Many of those reforms shared great broad support from community groups, police officers, local police chiefs, who lived and worked in our community, arbitration reform in particular. The future changes that I'd like to see are around sentencing and parole reform, making the system work for more individuals committing the same crime, regardless of their income, their skin color, or their background. Basic fairness in our justice system means treating everyone equally under the law, ensuring that factors that determine justice are indeed blind. I'd also like to see work on reforms around the treatment of victims of sexual assault, processing of rape kits, as well as reforms that crack down on sex trafficking for those taking advantages of young women and children. I'm also the author of the North Metro Range expansion, one of only 3 regional facilities that's in the state that provide training. We need to acknowledge that it is possible to both train our officers and be confident that everyone goes home safely at the end of the day.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
Racial justice is a very important topic, and I do believe that we have a long way, some work to do in regards to different topics with that. And the important thing is to be listening to the people of our community, empowering them to use their voices, and really coming together as a community to talk about it. Even when people are coming out and saying that they cared about public safety, they also cared so much about racial justice and making sure that people felt supported and cared for within our state and within our community. I think that Minnesotans really do care about every single person here, and it's really important that we can do anything that we can to make sure that they are feeling safe and heard and supported within our walls.
Thank you. And Mr. Limmer?
Thank you. Trying to address racial justice in 60 seconds is almost impossible. Well, it is impossible. And quite honestly, we need more dialogue. We need more focus groups. We need more insight from people in racial communities that feel that they are subjects of injustice. It's vitally important to hear those voices. And we need time to do that. This is not going to be solved quickly. As for police, and when we think of police abuse or police issues, we commonly think of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And those are tough beats for cops. You gotta remember the environment that they're working in, but nevertheless, we've attempted to do so by improving education for police officers, training, de-escalation, recognizing mental illness as a growing concern. Various communities have different approaches, but this job is not done. We need to gather that insight to develop better policies, and I'm committed to that.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer, you'll be the first responder for this one. Do you support a reduction in taxes for residents and businesses? Why or why not? If so, which taxes would you like to see reduced?
Well, I'd like to start out by saying yes, of course I want to reduce taxes for residents and businesses. But it's a two-part question, kind of a short-term, long-term problem. The short term is we as a state are facing $5 to $6 billion shortfall next year. We already have a $2.5 billion shortfall. Trying to reduce taxes and dealing with that issue is near on impossible to put that combination together. But nevertheless, I don't believe we should raise taxes either. And when we get through with balancing that budget next year, and we've done it without raising taxes, 2010, 2011, 2012, we had a budget shortfall of almost the same proportion. We stopped it by not raising taxes. I do believe there is one tax that I would love to see repealed, and that's the income tax on our Social Security income checks that senior citizens have to pay for. Minnesota is only one of 13 states that continue to impose tax on senior citizens.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner.
In short, yes. During the last cycle, I was delighted we were able to provide some tax relief to middle-class families who need it most. I'm personally focused on two areas that would provide our community with greater tax equity. I authored a bill on property tax refunds, expanding the number of individuals eligible for property tax refunds, providing the greatest benefit for those on the bottom end of the spectrum, our seniors and those on fixed income, to allow them to age in place and enjoy their golden years. Hardworking families struggling to make ends meet and have a little bit more breathing room to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. I also support a reduction in charitable gaming taxes, which I've been a fierce advocate of allowing charitable gaming organizations, those like the Osseo Lions, to keep more of their revenues, to put that money back into projects within our communities and reinvest again in our community.
Thank you. Ms. Westland.
Thank you. You know, because of the foresight of Democrats in 2014, 1/3 of our budget surpluses go into a rainy day fund. And we have about almost a $2.4 billion reserve that is going to help our current COVID crisis, but it certainly will not address the big structural challenges that we face. But you know, when you balance a budget, there are two parts of it. You look at revenue and you look at expenses, and while there are certainly ways that we can look in the budget for some efficiencies, we have to be very careful that we are not making cuts to education, K-12 education, and health and human services, which make up about 70% of our budget. And so, you know, we have to be cautious about going through the budget and certainly doing everything we can to find efficiencies, but understanding we can't cut our way out of this. By the same token, Governor Walz himself has said recently that we also cannot tax our way out of this. And so we should be looking at ways, however, that we might roll back some tax breaks that were provided in the 2017 tax bill.
Thank you. And Ms. Trosson.
With talking to people in the community, taxes was also something that's come up at the door. People are concerned. They're on fixed budgets. They don't have a lot of money, and they know that there's a shortfall coming in regards to the amount of money that's available within the state. And they are very concerned that they won't be able to make their house payments. They sit down with their families at the end of the month, and they try and figure out how they're going to pay their house payment again, trying to figure out how they're going to keep food on the table, and taxes is a piece of it that they talk about a lot, and it's huge. We have to look to eliminate waste. We have to look to eliminate fraud within different parts of government to try and make sure that the money is being used appropriately, so kids have the right funding for schools, so we have the funding for our seniors. It's crucial that we make sure that we do the best that we can to make sure that people have the best chance at survival here.
Okay, our last 1-minute answer from your advanced questions. Ms. Trosson, you'll be the first responder. How would you improve the business climate in the state, and how will you retain businesses in the state?
Business is super huge. I don't know if anybody's been watching TV, but there's been a lot of ads from South Dakota asking businesses to come there. We do not want to lose our businesses to South Dakota. It is essential that we have a great climate for businesses. It allows people to have jobs. Med tech is huge in our state, and it's really important that we continue to make sure that they're supported. Small businesses are huge. I mean, you look at companies like Polaris, who really was started by 3 brothers and 3 guys in a garage, and now it's a huge company in Minnesota. So we got to make sure that we have laws that allow new businesses, startup businesses, to start and be financially successful, so that the next Polaris or whomever business it is able to continue on.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
When I think of business climate, I think of a very long discussion that's gone on for over 40 years in the state of Minnesota. We have heard of the last one leaving Minnesota should turn the lights out. And that was in 1980. And we have not had a lot of progress since. We don't have Fortune 500 companies putting startups in Minnesota. They have their office, they have their representation, but they advance their jobs and their businesses elsewhere. There's 9 to 10 other states that don't even charge corporate income tax, and yet Minnesota has some of the highest commercial property rates in the country, as well as the regulations. So deregulating, lowering taxes is critical. I would advocate a total tax reform of the whole state. This type of spending caused by the taxation and vice versa is killing a lot of people, and they're moving out of the state, and we just can't afford that anymore.
Ms. Westland?
Yeah, so once again, we sort of have a COVID situation that we have to deal with, and our business community, especially small businesses such as my own, have been deeply affected by COVID-19. But once again, one of the things that actually attracts businesses to Minnesota is the fact that we have one of the most well-educated workforces in the country. And we have a quality of life here that includes many things that we balance with what people pay in terms of their taxes. We do need to be working with our federal government to partner with our business community to make sure that we get our businesses through the current crisis. There has been some money that has come from the federal government to help our business community. Another thing that would really help our business community, and especially our communities around the state, would be if we could pass a bonding bill. These would provide projects around the state. It would provide repairs and maintenance to our infrastructure. Infrastructure is also deeply important to our business community.
And Ms. Bonner?
Thank you. There are 2 primary areas where we need to focus. The first, I believe the next session will need to be nimble and address the continuing needs of our small businesses on Main Street, and then, so that they have the necessary tools to get back on their feet. This will involve listening and talking and taking action to ensure our businesses survive and our communities can thrive. And I look forward to working with our local businesses to make that a reality. Second, in terms of retention, there's a reason why Minnesota is always at the top of those best places to live and work, and why we enjoy such a good quality of life. Keeping Minnesota on the list of those best places to do business will require critical investments in things like healthcare, great schools, a focus on STEM education, especially for our girls, to fill those technology jobs we struggle to fill, affordable housing, clean air and water, getting infrastructure that supports getting to work and getting the kids to soccer practice, as well as the transportation of those goods across our corridors of commerce.
Okay, we're now going to solve the world in 30 seconds or less. Let's see, Ms. Bonner, you're going to be our first responder. First one is, do you agree with the scientific consensus that human activity is causing climate change? If elected, what will you do to address this climate change?
I do think that's true, and I think that there's loads and loads of scientific evidence to show that. Certainly here in Minnesota, one of the things that we've been doing a great job of, and including partnering with our businesses here across the state, to create more clean energy and get good clean energy jobs. And I think that that is a really good path to help reduce some of those issues and make us a cleaner, brighter place to live in the future.
Ms. Westland.
Yes, I believe in science and I believe in scientific evidence, and I think we actually need to stop having the question about whether or not climate change is real and whether or not humans have contributed to it. I think that that's well settled. We do need to focus on shifting our economy to clean energy, renewable energy jobs that will provide good paying jobs throughout the state of Minnesota. We are moving in that direction already in terms of taking some of our coal powered fire energy plants offline, and we need to be focusing on what we can do to continue that effort.
Ms. Trosson.
This is a newer topic to me in regards to different things, but I do think that any time that we can do anything to do better things for the environment, it's really important. Research is needed. I know that there's a lot of innovative things happening to change things in the coal industry to reduce emissions and different things like that. So there's a lot of different opportunities there that I think that people are really working hard on.
Mr. Limmer.
Thank you. Climate change, yes, climate change is occurring. I think it's being observed just about everywhere in the world. Does human activity contribute to it? Yes. There's many scientific reports on it. And there's also scientific reports on the long-standing and short-term cyclical changes in the world's temperature. We only have to look at the Ice Age, and there were very few human beings around, and there was huge changes in the environment. So I would say let's keep our eyes open and let's study every issue we possibly can.
Okay. Mr. Limmer, you'll be first one on this one. Physical closing of schools proved how much schools do for our children, including meals, teaching, emotional support, and a safe place for students to be. How will you continue to support the schools in Minnesota while also helping families in need?
Well, recently, while being in office, we passed the record K-12 education budget in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota's education K-12 absorbs close to 46% of our entire nearly $48 billion budget. So it is a #1 priority in the state of Minnesota. I agree with that priority. In order to keep schools open during a pandemic, that's always a good question to ask. But nevertheless, I think the way the schools are beginning to handle it on a one-by-one basis with individual school districts deciding is the best way to go.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Bonner.
Yes, certainly, you know, this has shed a light on some of the inequities across our system as well. And I think that really what this means is looking at how we better support our teachers and our students within the classroom. We know that some learners have done great with distance learning while some have not. And so certainly making sure that we have the tools and the technology available for all of our teachers to be successful is going to be vitally important into making that happen in the future.
Ms. Westland.
What we have seen during this crisis is we have seen the inequities, as Representative Bonner has said, laid bare. And we have members of our community who have been telling us for a long, long time about the problems and the opportunity gap that exists in our schools. We have to do something about making sure everyone has access to technology. We have to ensure there are wraparound services at our schools to help students who are struggling so that our teachers can focus on teaching. Our teachers, our ESPs, our professional staff do remarkable work with our children, and they deserve our greatest thanks.
And Ms. Trosson.
There has been a great opportunity in the silver lining of learning a little bit more about the disparities within our educational system. I think it's a great silver lining to expanding on the available options to kids in regards to how they learn. Kids weren't getting the tools that they needed. That's why we have the gap in this, and so it's important that now we can see different ways that we can be innovative and give them the tools that they need.
Thank you. Ms. Westland, you'll be the first responder for this one. Do you favor defunding the police? How do you believe we should move forward with reforming our public safety system?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I do not favor defunding the police, and it's been a little discouraging to me that so much outside money has been pouring into our district, making that claim that I do support that when in fact I do not. We do need to continue working with members of communities of color, with Black communities, with Indigenous communities, and with our police force to ensure that we are providing public safety that actually serves the community. We have asked our police more and more to do things that they were never designed or trained to do, and we need to be supporting our officers as well.
Ms. Bonner?
Yes, the question, or the answer to the question is no, I do not support defunding the police. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a lot of appetite for that amongst any of my legislative colleagues in the Minnesota House or the Senate for that matter. Quite frankly, I think we're very conscientious about how we do better within our communities to make sure that we're properly training our officers to be confident in their job, and also to make sure that folks in our community feel respected so that everyone goes home safely at the end of the day.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
I do not believe in defunding the police. I think it's really important and essential that we make sure that we support them and get them the education that they need. And that's why I'm so excited that you are supporting the bonding bill for the Northwest police expansion, because I think it's super important about the virtual training for de-escalation is super important for making sure that police feel confident when they're going into high stress situations.
Thank you. And Mr. Limmer?
No, I do not. I do not support defunding the police. When one would defund the police, one would defund the resources that police use to protect us. The logic that's being pushed for defunding the police, I think is short-sighted. I think it's motivated as a revenge motive, and quite honestly, it doesn't make sense. Hold individual police officers accountable for misdeeds, not an entire community.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner, you'll be the first one for this one. There's a very strong anti-vaccine movement in Minnesota, as evidenced by our increasing measles rate. Do you support this movement? How will you govern when a COVID-19 vaccination is released to balance safety and individual rights?
I do not support that standpoint. I'm the daughter of a nurse, and so I've always felt very firmly that decisions, particularly healthcare decisions, should be made with the best interests of the individual and working hand in hand with your physician to determine the best path. And certainly one of the things that I think is that once it has been determined safe and effective, absolutely, I do think that folks should be able to take that vaccine. And it also makes sure that folks who are not able to do so for health reasons or other can still continue to feel safe as others are able to do so.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
I feel that it is important to keep healthcare decisions between the doctor and the patient. The doctor is going to know best about different contraindications that a patient may have in regards to any medical procedure, and it's important that we make sure that that conversation is made and have the doctors have the ability to make a decision in the best interest of their patient without the government getting in the way.
Mr. Limmer?
Well, I believe in vaccines. I think they've proven themselves. However, there are times when some vaccines have been rushed through production and questions arise whether or not they're appropriate or not. Also, there's the issue of conscientious objection by individuals, religious groups that should be recognized, and a heavy hand of government should not be forcing people to take vaccines when it violates someone's sincerely held beliefs. I think it's appropriate to have vaccines, and I think they should pursue options to isolate individuals that may wish to not have vaccines.
Ms. Westland?
Thank you. I do support medical science, which has actually indicated that vaccines are in fact safe. Unfortunately, there has been so much misinformation put out into the broader community by disreputable sources that have created unnecessary fear among people regarding vaccines. Now, I don't want them to rush through a COVID vaccine, and unfortunately we've been hearing talk about that on the federal level. They need to take their time and get it right. But I think that while we do currently allow for some exclusions for vaccinations, I think for the most part, people should probably get vaccinated.
Thank you. Our next question, let's see, we'll start with Mr. Limmer on this one. As an elected official, oh, we did that one already. This is the other one I wanted to do. League of Women Voters here, ready? Do you support voting by mail? Why or why not?
Only in extreme circumstances do I agree with voting by mail. In Minnesota, we're rather unique. We have the longest 45-day period to turn in a ballot. You can apply for an absentee ballot and have it mailed to you. I don't think we need a mail-in ballot for the general population. I think it's important for people to participate in democracy and to go vote. One day out of every 2 to 4 years, I think most people can make it, and we have the options available in Minnesota.
Thank you. Ms. Westland?
First of all, I think we should be doing everything possible to encourage people to participate in their democracy. We have had no excuse absentee voting for a long time now, and in fact, there are some counties and places in Minnesota that only vote by mail. It has worked just fine. I voted by mail, my son has voted by mail. It is a safe system and a safe process. It's actually nothing new. Absentee voting is available to anyone who wants to avail themselves of it.
Ms. Bonner?
Thank you. As the Vice Chair of the Elections Committee, I love this question. First of all, yes, I absolutely support absentee voting. We've been using forms of absentee voting for well over 150 years in various forms, particularly in the military. We have used it across the country, and in cities and counties here in Minnesota, we've used it exclusively. It is absolutely safe, it is absolutely effective, and that has beautiful checks and balances to ensure that every single vote gets counted.
And Ms. Chaussen?
I think that we are lucky to live in a state where we have the options available to us that we can do mail-in, go to early voting, or to go into the election on the day of. And I think that it really should be left up to the individual person what they feel most comfortable with. Especially during in the middle of a pandemic, there's people who are just not comfortable going to the polls, and I think it's really great that Minnesota has a lot of options for people so they can still participate in voting.
Thank you. Our next question, and Ms. Chaussen, you'll be the first responder. Do you support state funding to increase broadband access to all Minnesotans with the priority for those households and businesses in greater Minnesota? Why or why not?
I think broadband is important, especially now with distance learning. I know that with distance learning in my house, there are times when things like that don't go exactly perfectly. So broadband is important to have for everybody in our state.
Mr. Limmer?
Should broadband be expanded in the state of Minnesota? Absolutely, yes. We want to make sure that everyone's productive. Everybody should have access to broadband. It's kind of like having some people have a telephone and someone down the street not having a telephone. We use broadband almost exclusively in some families and businesses. Absolutely, yes. Let's raise the tide for all boats.
Ms. Westland?
Yes, I do support broadband in greater Minnesota. In fact, if we want to see the ability for communities in greater Minnesota have better economic development to attract businesses, they absolutely have to have access to broadband. And what we have seen, of course, during the pandemic, as has been mentioned, we have kids who are trying to do distance learning who don't have access to an essential tool. At this point, the internet is actually an essential service, and we need to make sure that it's available throughout our state.
Okay. All right, this one is here, and I totally picked it. Oh, yes, I'm going to eat you, and then I've got this one ready to go. Ms. Bonner. I scratched you off and forgetting that you were starting first.
Yes, I absolutely support broadband. I think it has shown that there are a great amount of disparities across the state. Particularly, we see the need for this. You know, being in IT for over 20 years, I see the incredible possibilities here, not only for us to make sure that we're getting those educational tools out for folks across our state, but also to expand our businesses. You know, we have so many communities in rural Minnesota who would love to have their generations stay in place, but they can't do that without good jobs. And the ability to have that broadband makes that possible.
Okay, those who know me know why I'm going to ask this question. Minnesota recently passed the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act. Okay, my kids are diabetic, I'm going to ask it. So, do you support the state further regulating manufacturers of critical health care supplies like insulin for Minnesotans that can obtain their needed drugs and things in a price they can afford? Let's go with Ms. Bonner.
Thank you. I have been a vocal champion of the Alex Smith Emergency Insulin Act. I'm also the big sister to a type 1 diabetic since the age of 3. This is an area that I have felt extremely passionate about in terms of bringing down the cost of prescription drugs, specifically for chronic conditions. And in fact, I actually had a bill in the works to introduce some copay restrictions. But fortunately, the system worked and organizations actually voluntarily decided to put those copays in place before it became necessary.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson.
I absolutely support anything to reduce the cost of insulin, and I think it's super important that we support anybody with chronic conditions, that we make sure that they have affordable medications available to them so that they can be supported.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer.
Yes, I'm in favor of anything that improves access for health care, as well as life-saving drugs like insulin, as well as the affordability aspect and bringing those prices down. Different ways to do that. There's even been talk of going to Canada and buying drugs there. That has some federal issues involved in it, but nevertheless, states should involve themselves in every option possible to bring the price down and make these type of drugs accessible to all people.
And Ms. Westland.
Thank you. As someone who suffers from asthma and who did not properly treat my asthma for many years because the drugs were so incredibly expensive, I am deeply committed to making sure that nobody in the state of Minnesota ever has to make the choice between treating a serious or life-threatening health condition and keeping a roof over their head. It's just unconscionable. So I absolutely support making sure that we do something to bring down the price of important life-saving drugs.
Thank you for allowing me my huge bias on that topic. Thank you. I am supposed to keep them alive. Okay. We're going to move on to our closing question, in which you have your 1 minute to respond and sum up your candidacy. In summary, how do you intend to best serve your district and move this state forward? We're going to go in reverse order from where we started. So, Ms. Trosson.
Okay. I am running to listen, support, and empower the people of our community and our state. I live a life of civil service, from listening to the seniors at our local nursing home to listening to the voices of the children I work with. I have been able to support and empower the people and have the opportunity to have them live their best lives. As a lifetime resident of Osseo and Maple Grove, I am committed to serving our community in this great state of Minnesota. I would be honored to be your next state representative.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner.
I'm truly blessed to serve our community. I believe in putting people first, making government that works for our families and seniors, using common sense for the common good. I believe deeply that I serve my entire community, and I have a track record to prove it. I'm tenacious at removing barriers, reaching across the aisle, and getting things done. If it's good for my community, I'm fighting for it. I'm Kristen Bonner. It's an honor to serve you. I ask for your vote so that we can keep moving forward together.
Ms. Westland.
Thank you. My mom raised 4 children on her own, including my younger sister, who is blind and has been severely affected by autism since birth. I know it was not easy for my mom, but I learned grit and determination and independence from her. And when I was faced with some of my own challenges, raising 2 boys as a single mom, putting myself through school, starting my own law firm from nothing, she was there to encourage me when times were tough. I had someone looking out for me. My life experiences have helped me develop a deep sense of empathy and concern for others and a strong desire to serve. And we need leaders who will work hard, who are uniters and not dividers, who will work cooperatively to find common ground to solve the very real challenges we face. I will work as hard for your family as I have for my own. Thank you.
And Mr. Limmer.
Thank you. I'm Warren Limmer, the Republican State Senator for the people in Maple Grove, Osseo, Rogers, and Dayton. When I think of the role of government, I think of the safety and future of my friends, neighbors, and family. As a father, I want my kids to be safe as well as yours. And I want them to have the best education so they can achieve the greatest impact in their life. As a policy maker, we must always pursue a passion for justice and have a compassion for those least among us. In order to attract more jobs, we must prioritize spending while at the same time reduce waste, overreaching regulations, and taxes. And as always, I will continue to demand that government be limited yet efficient and always the guardian of our civil liberties. I'm Senator Warren Limmer running for re-election. I'm honored to serve you in the past. I look forward to this election, and thank you. May God bless.
Once again, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to thank the candidates for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. I would like to thank the voters for viewing and participating by submitting excellent questions. I also would like to thank our friends here at CCX Media for their continued support of the League of Women Voters and our shared mission to provide nonpartisan forums for voters to get to know the people who wish to represent them. Remember that if we could not get to your question tonight, or if you have further questions for the candidates, we invite you to direct them to the candidates with all of your concerns. Information about your candidates may also be found on vote411.org. Please remember to get out and vote on or before November 3rd, as your vote truly counts. Thank you, have a good evening, and be safe.